Thank you for coming along to the Shell Trading PMI Agile event this evening. My name is Gavin Spry, so I'm representing Shell Trading here, and I guess from a Shell Trading point of view, we're very excited to be able to host this event this evening. Over the last, 3 years, I guess, Shell has been working on a new agile approach, which is very much a blend of agile and our own assurance practices. And so when we were asked to host this event this evening, we thought that's very apt given everything that we're doing, and so we jumped at the chance.
So myself, I'm Robert Moores, Program Manager by day, member of PMI, PMP professional, done the ACP exam, which obviously Joseph will talk us through. And I've been keen to sort of do something around sort of agile for PMI since the beer, I think, with Ray. Last December we talked a lot about getting an agile community of practice together for PMI in the UK. It was many a great idea sort of over a beer. But and Johan, obviously a lot of people know Johan. He said, if you're this passionate about doing something, then get off your behind and make it happen. So it's great that we've been able to put it together. It's taken us probably 12 months to get it to actually sort of happen. So it's great that we're here. So that's me, and that's sort of the history of the event and hopefully the future as well. We've got a lot to get in, so I won't take too much of your time. So basically we've got Joseph, who's over from Seattle via Oslo. So he's had a good trip around the world to try and get here tonight, looking fresh for it. But he'll take us through the ACP and then field any questions at the end of that. After that, Sergey, who I've worked with in the past, he's a delivery manager at BP, and Bob, who's Scrum Master at EDFT, will take us through basically the plan for the community of practice over the next year, what we aim to do, the events that we're going to schedule, workshops and the like, and then we'll field a few questions on that. And then after that, really, we'll just do an open session if we've got time. So like I say, we're going to try and cram a lot in, do a Q&A on any sort of major issues that you're experiencing with Agile, and just get some sort of feel for how people are finding the implementation of Agile, governance, whether it's working well in technology across sort of business. So that's the theory. There's a lot to get in there. At the end, Nick Lake from PMI will do a quick sales pitch on trying to get people to sign up for PMI UK. So after that, I think it's upstairs for drinks, just around the corner, Cafe Mex, and then backup option is the Coal Hole on the Strand for a few beers later. So that's it. So over to Joseph, who is the CEO actually and president of Whitewater Projects, an Agile master. So take it away.
All right, can you hear me in the back? All right, good. So I won't turn on any kind of extra magnification of my voice. So this is me. I am Joseph Leif. I'm the president and CEO of Whitewater Projects, but I'm also here representing the Agile community of practice from PMI, right? This is the UK chapter of the UK version of the community of practice. But if you go on the website, the PMI website, you can go to the different communities of practice that we have there. And I am the co-chair right now, or co-lead for engagement and for the ACP content support team. So I'm going to be giving up the content support team in favor of engagement. So it's really interesting that we've scheduled this before I took on that engagement part of it, and this is exactly what I would be doing as the lead of engagement. So it's really good to be here. Someone post that for me. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the ACP. How many of you are familiar with the ACP? A little bit? How many of you have the ACP? What? All right, let's change that. So I'm going to talk about why we need another certification. Why did PMI do this in the first place? Because don't we have enough certifications? I'm going to talk about who it's actually targeted to, and then we'll talk a little bit about how it compares to the other major certification out there right now, which is Scrum Master. How many of you are Scrum Masters? Okay, that's a good number of those. Get the next slide. All right. So a little bit of history around how the ACP came to be. Back in 2010, PMI did a survey of members and found that about 12% of them were using Agile in one way or another in their work. 1 year later, 27% of people were using it. They're like, whoa! It's like over 100% increase in the number of people who are using it. We should look at what we should do about this. They didn't say we should go make a certification. They said we should look at what we should do about this. And so they formed a steering committee of thought leaders that aren't all, there were 2 members of PMI on this board, right? Ahmed Sedki, Alistair Coburn. Anybody familiar with Alistair Coburn? If you know Alistair Coburn, you know that he's not necessarily best friends with PMI, right? He was on this board. They asked him to be on there because they wanted his opinion. Dennis Stevens, Jesse Fuel, who was one of the people that helped found the Agile community of practice at PMI in general. So he was one of those that got all of this started. Jim Kunja, Michelle Slager, who's the author of the Software Project Manager's Bridge to Agility, right? Mike Kottmeyer and Mike Griffiths. So these folks were together for 18 months or so and discussing what should be the response. And at the beginning of this group of people discussing this, there was one person on the team that thought, yeah, we should do a certification. One. By the end of 18 months, they all came to agree that, yeah, there is a need for a certification out here. It's a niche that isn't being met right now, and that is something that's a broader certification than anything else that's in the market, right? What you have right now in the market are very narrow and deep. You have the Scrum Master certification, basically, is the most popular one. And that's a great certification. I hold both the CSM and the CSP, but it's not broad. And so what they said was, you know what, we need a broader certification to talk about Agile as a practitioner broadly in the market. So we want to cover lots of different Agile topics. They brought together about 70 authors to write the questions on the exam, and they go through all kinds of rounds of, are the questions good, and do they really ask the right things, and do the people who know what they're saying, when they answer the questions, do they get them right? Because how many of you have taken the PMP? You know how they write questions in the PMP? Right? Which is the best of these 3 right answers? Those kinds of things, right? But they write really good exams. I have to say, PMI is really good at writing quality exams. And I was asked to be one of those authors, but I wanted to teach classes. So if you teach the classes, you can't have written the questions. So I said no. And so they wrote all the questions. The question is, who is the certification for? I want to be very, very clear. This is not a project manager certification. This is PMI doing a non-project manager certification. This is a certificate for practitioners. You could be a developer, you could be a tester, you could be an executive, any kind of leader within the organization, anyone. You could be a project manager. But it is not a project manager certification. It is a broad practitioner certification. So if you are using Agile and you understand it, you've had the experience that's required by the certification, you're in. It's kind of what I was talking about earlier. If you're familiar with the Scrum certifications, the Certified Scrum Master is a 2-day class, and now it's a short test. It's 25 questions, I think. Not a real deep or broad certification, right? But really in demand in the market for some reason. Certified Scrum Professional. Now that's the one that if anybody's hiring people and they need Scrum people, look for the CSP. Because that means they know their stuff, right? They've been doing it for at least 2 years. And now they've taken an exam. When I got my CSP, I had to do an essay test. It was long and kind of annoying. But now you have to answer a 250 question test, I believe, to get the CSP. The ACP is broader, right? While the Scrum certifications are Scrum, the ACP talks about Scrum, but it also talks about XP and Lean and Kanban and DSDM. So if you don't know all these all these different approaches to being agile, you won't do well on the exam. I have a sample exam on my Whitewater Project's website, and I get the little pop-ups things whenever somebody does the exam, or certain ones. And it's not unusual for people to get like only 18 questions, like to get 8 out of 18 or 5 out of 18, because it's not just a Scrum certification. And if you only know Scrum, you're not going to make it. So PMI is looking to give a broader understanding. Oh, this is good. Just poke it until all 3 of them are up. There we go. So a little comparison of why these certifications are. And this is quoted off of the Scrum Alliance website. So the CSM, Certified Scrum Master, is supposed to be a first step. Originally, it was actually designed as a marketing tool. And if you talked with Ken back in the day, it was actually designed, marketing is maybe not the right word, to proselytize, right? To get the word out about Scrum. So it was intentionally low barrier. They wanted to get lots of people to know about Scrum. A brilliant move, actually. 2-day class, it's not too long. You get certified after you're done. You're a master. Certified Scrum Practitioner actually is the one that compares better to the ACP. They have similar levels of requirement for experience and such. So the CSP is wanting to be a clearly defined and well-respected certification, the primary credential for Scrum professionals. Right? So if you have your CSM and you haven't gotten your CSP, work on it, because that's the one that you should be working for. But really, I think you should be working for this one. Right. So this is what they said when they got done with their discussions. We want to have a certification that shows your level of professionalism, right? That helps increase your professional versatility, that's why it's broad, and is more credible than the existing entry-level certifications. Now, at the time they wrote this, the CSP did not have an exam associated with it, right? So it had the essay test, but not an exam associated with it. So that was even a stronger statement, because there was nothing in the market that was a, hey, prove to me that you know your stuff certification. So that was what they were at. Now the CSP requires, I think it's either a 250 question exam or a certain number of classes. Is that? How are we doing? So this is a little chart. I get little emails from PMI every month about how many certificates there are in all of the different versions, right? And so I took all of them this past week and I put them all in a spreadsheet. And here's what we have. This is last January, not this is this January of 2013. This is January of 2012. This was when the certification went live. So prior to that, for about 6 months was the beta period. That's when I took my exam. And at the end, when they didn't give me my certification right away, because what they did in the process of doing the beta was make sure the questions are all good, right? They were testing the questions. And so they had to wait until they were done saying, yeah, the questions are good. So January something, we had about 500 ACPs. Now, in September of this year, we had close to 4,000. So the ACP has actually passed in number of certified professionals all of the certifications except PMP and the, what's that intro? CIPM. So it's passed all of them except those two. we're going to pass those two. No, okay. Probably won't pass PMP, but we might, who knows? Yeah. PMP's been around for a little bit. You get 500,000 or more, that's how many PMPs there are in the world. So I'm encouraged that in less than 2 years, we're close to 4,000 ACPs. So is the ACP right for you? Scrum certifications are great. They're great. And if your organization is only using Scrum, you probably don't need the ACP. If you are confident in that organization, that you're going to be in that organization for a long time, it's only using it's only using Scrum, right? Then you're good to go. You don't need to have the broader knowledge. Now, as a professional, you may say, you know what? I want to be relevant to other industries and other organizations. So I might not be at this company that's just doing Scrum forever. Then look at the ACP. You need to have different understandings of different technologies within the Agile world. Then the ACP is the place to go. So how do you get the ACP? This is the requirements that you have for getting the ACP. You have to have 2,000 hours of project experience within the past 5 years, and 1,500 hours of Agile project experience within the past 3 years. When they actually started it, it was 2 years, but they looked at that and said, not everybody is doing just Agile. They may be, multi-threading and doing some waterfall and some Agile projects, so let's extend it to 3 years. So they extended that out to 3 years. You have to have 21 hours of Agile training, contact hours, and you don't need to be in PMP. I get that question a lot. Do I have to have my PMP? No. If you do have your PMP, they waive the 2,000 hours because you had to have it for the PMP. Right? You don't have to have another 2,000 though. The hours have to be non-overlapping. So if you had 2,000 hours here and some more hours, you can't see that because it's way down here. If they were overlapping 2,000 hours here and the 1,500 hours here, that doesn't work. They have to be separate, right? That's it. It's going to say no to that. Okay, there we go. So how much does it cost? People are interested in that sometimes. It varies. How much do your classes cost? CSM classes, this is in US dollars because that's where I'm from. CSM classes are, in the $1,000 to $2,000 range. You don't have to take another class for the CSP because you would have to have had your CSM. So that's how that works. There's a $300 registration fee because you do have to be a member of the Scrum Alliance. You have to renew your membership every 2 years. And way down here that you can't see in the back, every 2 years you have to have 45 SEUs, which are contact hours. 45 more training hours every year. ACP, you don't have to take a class, right? You just have to know your stuff. You have to have 21 hours of time, but there's not a class that is the ACP class. So who knows how much it's going to cost? You could get hours free from stuff like this. I think this probably counts for PDUs. Yeah, so that would count on Agile PDUs because you're here listening about Agile. You can get hours for volunteering. Is that good? Pitching for volunteers? Come volunteer for the community of practice. You can get hours from watching webinars. If you go on the website, on the Agile community of practice, there are tons of webinars. Tons of them. And they're really good stuff. And in multiple languages. So if you want to listen to one that's not in English, there's lots of different languages we have going on. We also do webinars with other communities of practice. So I'm doing 2 with the government community of practice, and folks are doing with pharmaceuticals community of practice, and just lots of cross-pollination that we're trying to do with these different organizations. Let's see. So to take the test, it's $335 or $435. I don't know why they actually give a paper exam, but okay, there it is. For recertification or keeping your certification, every 3 years you have to have 60 more PDUs that are agile. So if you're though those can cross-pollinate onto your PMP. So you can use the same ones for both the PMP and your ACP. So just get all your PDUs in agile. That's close to the end here. Oh, what is the exam? It's a 50-50 split between tools and techniques and knowledge and skills. And then there's 3 different levels of knowledge and skills. I'm not going to go into what all those are, but it's all on the PMI website when you go on there and look for Agile, the Agile certification. The certification will give you one of 3 levels of result in each of these. So while the PMP has like all these different categories that you can get results in, and whether you did well or not, or at least that's what it was when I got mine years ago, they have 2. It doesn't give you a lot to go on if you didn't pass. And, you know, they don't publish the passing score. So they'll give you, you know, proficient, moderately proficient, or below proficient. I'm going to guess that if you got any of them below proficient on either one of these, you're probably not going to pass it. It's just me guessing. It's not a fact. So, exam is not publicized. What is the exam? It's 120 questions. 100 of them are scored. 20 of them are test sample questions that they're testing out, right? Because they're always trying to make the exam better. It takes 3 hours, just like, you know, it's a prometric thing, right? You go to a prometric testing center, you take the exam. You get something like this. This is mine, right? Here I am. Got my results here. I'm proficient in both of them. Woohoo! But that's what it is, right? That's all you're going to get. I think. Oh, this is an eye chart. If you can read this, you don't need glasses. These are the recommended reading. You can go on the PMI website and find all these. They're all recommended reading. So there's not a body of knowledge for the ACP. PMI actually intentionally will not create a body of knowledge because it's not our place, right? We're providing, as PMI, we're providing a certification about the Agile world. We're not, so PMI say, we're not the Agile world. And if, can you imagine the reaction from the Scrum Alliance or, you know, scrum.org or the Agile Alliance if PMI decided to, we're going to publish the body of knowledge on Agile? It would be bad. So they've said, no, we're not going to do that. So we have these books that you can study to see if you're going to pass the exam. Now, these books were what the test questions were taken from. So the information is all there. However, it's a hell of a lot of reading. I highly recommend you get Mike Griffith's book. Mike Griffith's book. It's yo big, that thick. It's green. You can get it on Amazon. It's like $90. Excellent. And Mike Griffiths was one of those guys on the board at the beginning, so he's got a pretty good idea what's in the exam. And I think this is the last slide. Yep. Yeah, questions for me about the ACP? Rhymes. You gonna go get it? You should. It's a great certification.
What has the impact been like in the US with the certification?
What has the
impact been like?
What has the impact been
Yeah.
of the certificate in the United States?
Yeah.
I am starting to see it listed together with other certifications, like on job listings and things like that, which is the thing you really want to look for, right? Is this really going to be good for my career? If I'm out looking for a job, are people going to, A, know what that certification is, and B, care? And I'm starting to see it listed along with other certifications. I'm not seeing it listed by itself, which is reasonable to expect at this point in 2 years in. So I'm not seeing it like everywhere, but it's starting to show up, which is, you know, there's 4,000 of them in the world, so that's pretty good. questions? Yes.
So when I took the exam,
Why don't you use that microphone you have in your hand?
not as good as you, am I?
Well, you're facing the wrong direction too.
Yeah, so when I took the exam over a year ago, it was very much, I thought it was almost a copy of, or very close to CSM. So it was, I was looking for something, because PMI have obviously got the PMP. And
Really?
I thought it was, yeah, and I was quite disappointed it wasn't more accommodating of the project governance side of things and constructing an initiative. It was very much, preparing a team for delivering an agile Scrum way, rather than how to get to that point and align it with business, strategy and vision or whatever. Has that changed since that time?
No. So the questions haven't changed. They have not done an update to the questions yet. They're working on doing the update. When I took the exam, the questions that I got, and you'll get different questions, so that's, it's luck of the draw. There were obviously a lot of questions about Scrum. 75% of the people out there doing Agile use Scrum, so that's not unreasonable. I did get a lot of questions on it, about a reasonable amount of questions on it, about Kanban and Lean. There were a lot, I thought, of questions about risk management, which is something that I've never heard other Agile groups talk about. I'm having a hard time remembering what the exam was, but if you go onto whitewaterprojects.com, my website, and like 3 hours after I took the exam, as part of that beta group, I did a teleconference with one of the guys from PMI to make sure I was being honest. But I just give you what I saw in the exam. This is what I've felt. There were a lot of questions about this. There weren't questions about that. Here's what you should look for. Here's what you should study. I actually go through all those books and talk about what you should look for in each one of the books if you're going to read all the books, because I had just taken it. So it's kind of rambling, but that's because it was unscripted. It was just me immediately talking about the exam. So you're right. I don't think it covers the governance kinds of things about being an Agile organization. Yeah. All right.
Come on.
Yes.
I'm familiar with the PMI exam process, the creating the exam, and the concept that for every question there has to be one definitive right answer.
Yep.
Are those definitive right answers found in those books? That's sorry.
So the question was, you know how exams are. The way they write questions for PMI, there's supposed to be one definitive right answer. Yes, those definitive right answers are in those books. However, I will say, if you're just reading those books by themselves, so it's easy to go from the exam to look back at the books and say, there's the answer. But to go from the books to think about the exam, it'll be a little bit more difficult. Does that make sense? Because sometimes those books actually are contradictory. Some parts of them, because, Agile is Agile, right? It's practice and theory and all, it's life, yeah. It's all, so there's possible contradictory things you're going to read in here. So if you're reading this and going, which one's the right answer? That's hard. When you come over here and read it, the exam, and look back and go, oh, I know what that is, right? That's why I say read Mike Griffith's book, because he's going to have the perspective of someone who was on the board and gave direction to the organization. All right?
One from me.
Yes. Every time I'm about ready to say, let's go move on, somebody grab it.
You can relate. I was going to say.
Woo!
Perhaps I won't. Perhaps
Okay.
you can relate.
Right into that speech.
It was just the actual mechanics of applying. Is it the same sort of stuff as applying for the PMP?
Yeah, there's, you have to document your Agile experience and what companies did you work for, and yes, they audit it, just like PMP, so yes, the same kind of process. It's PMI. Yeah. The question is, how do you get those 1,500 hours if your company doesn't necessarily do a lot of Agile projects? You got to do Agile projects. Well, or you have to do Agile work. So it actually said back in the beta program, it said 1,500 hour of Agile project experience, and they took the word project out because it could be program management and all those kinds of things. So product management more apropos. But
If one of my projects in my program is running in Agile, then I could count that toward my hours.
if you're involved with it, yeah. If one of the projects in my portfolio is using Agile, can I count that? So the answer is, do you think you'll pass an audit?
There's an audit to go on.
But that's the real question you have to ask yourself when you're putting stuff down on that application. Do I think I'll pass an audit with this? Can I honestly answer the questions that they're going to ask me? Were you working on this? How many hours did you put in on this project? That's what that's what they're going to ask. Actually, they probably won't ask you. They'll probably call your manager, whose name you list on there, and ask them.
What are the current plans? What's current thinking about the next steps?
Next steps, I know that they're working on updating the questions to it. Yeah. Beyond that, I don't really don't know what they've got up their sleeve for it.
Follow up. Is
Yeah.
there any plans with the PMI to push this onto more organizations to list it in job applications instead of seeing?
Oh,
CSM?
yeah.
What are their
Just like every certification that PMI has, they want to market that certification, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how PMI sustains the work that they do for us, is by making the money. You have to support an organization, so yeah, they want to get it out there. I'd love to see them push it more myself, because I think it's a great certification. It's the only broad one, right?
Yep, so I'm on the bottom left-hand corner there. I'm not a Scrum Master only. Obviously, I'm a project manager, 20 years of project management, but in the last 5 years, I've got involved in Agile. And to be honest with you, the reason I'm here is that I was a part of that conversation in the pub, and I was one of the enthusiasts who really felt that, in the UK, we should be doing more about Agile. And that's really why myself and Sergey are both, who was also in the pub. Sorry, Serge, would you like to introduce yourself?
All right. I'm a front office delivery manager at BP. My experience with Agile started kind of quite a few years back, starting from XP, then kind of more traditional project management style, more iterative type of development, more Scrum style. So I'm a big fan of Agile. I believe it does add value to what the businesses do. We sometimes stick to the process. We sometimes say, well, it's all about the process. Let's follow the process. That kind of ensures we deliver the right outcome. Well, guess what? People deliver this outcome. So the energy in the team, and that's what Agile helps to achieve as well.
Okay, Rob, would you mind? So, really, these are some of the reasons why we felt there might be merit in starting up a community of practice. Certainly, in my personal experience, which is obviously a relatively few organisations, I've seen a big increase in Agile. I think the figures that Joseph mentioned in terms of a survey and project managers who are countering Agile, it seems there has been a tremendous increase. So Agile's really hitting us. There are lots of reasons why that might be the case, but I think people are seeing that it does help a time to market. People bring software to the market more quickly. There is a natural alignment with what a business does. Having worked on waterfall over many years, sometimes that alignment can be sketchy for a few months and possibly years at a time. So a definite alignment with the business. Certainly a flexibility built in. That word I used to use a lot was scope creep. I remember saying that quite a lot of times over the last few years. I've stopped saying it really in the last 5 years so much because, of course, I'm embracing change now. Growing reputation for successful deliveries is clear from the stats I've seen. This is a little sample here where the amount of successful projects it seems to be increasing, and companies are latching onto this sort of track record, I think, to some degree, and finding another way to do things.
I just want to add maybe on the kind of business needs and business environment. Well, I'm working in the fast-moving business environment. But I believe that nowadays this sort of environment is everywhere. If, let's say, 10 years ago, we could afford to have projects running for maybe half a year, 1 year. These days, really, the results are needed in weeks. That's changed the whole environment we are operating in. So the business needs and meeting the business needs using Agile approaches is one of the key benefits.
Okay, so we also felt that the project managers who are PMI members are encountering Agile more. Either they're transitioned over already, or they are looking to transition over. And I think as members of the PMI, this is our professional body after all, we would look to the PMI to some extent to provide us some help, some backup, some forum, ways of moving things forward. It will over the time give us a chance to share experiences. For some people, more to seek knowledge who are less experienced. For those who are more experienced, to give knowledge, to help contribute to best practice. So it was seen as perhaps a way of getting this kick-started in the UK. It certainly happened a lot more in America. It's extremely big practice. Lots going on. I don't know why in the UK we haven't done this before, but there we go. It also gives us a chance in the UK to start contributing more towards whether it be PMBOK, PMI, ACP, whatever it is, that best practice situation. And it does give us a chance to sort of utilise PMI as a strong organisation. It's got a big infrastructure to put meetings on like this. It's got credibility with people like Shell who will see that organisation and provide wonderful facilities like this. And also will attract speakers. We've got the backing of PMI to attract speakers. There's obviously money provided from the UK chapter. So it all sort of comes to make sense. But at the end of the day, it's a community, and it will very much rely on people being interested. And to be honest with you, I think when we sat in the pub, you really don't know whether people will be interested. The fact that this has been organised for about 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks maybe, and there's 120 people wanting to come and only 80 could fit in, I think hopefully that's an endorsement that there is interest there. So hopefully long may that interest continue.
I think the audience today actually proves that there is interest. I mean, look at how many people actually managed to come today to this event. So for me, it's a really good indication there is interest. And also, I believe that it's not just the interest that exists, but we already managed to gain some experience. And I hope to see more people willing to share their experience with others. As Bob is saying, we need more people who would like to be involved.
Okay, Rob. Okay, and certainly Agile brings with it lots of challenges. We mentioned some of them a little bit earlier. Obviously, organisations are going for Agile across the enterprise. It's very much a sort of team-centred approach. So how does that map in a place like Shell or, these vast organisations that are trying to operate Agile across the piece? Corporate visibility, of course, needs a degree of consistency. If teams have got a lot of self-determination about how they do things, how do you find out what's going on? How do you track things? Inevitably, there is a need to track things to some degree. Where does the PMO fit in? I think I've had that conversation with my own PMO a few times. What can I look at? What can I check? Funnily enough, actually, there's a lot of things you can see in Agile. It's probably in some ways more visible in terms of progress than Waterfall can be. So, there are lots of challenges like this. I'm sure you're all encountering some of these and lots of other ones. So hopefully we can talk together about some of these things and discover these things together as a community, really, because there are an awful lot more. So hopefully, if you're interested in participating, you'll come along to the meetings. We hope to have 4 next year. And also, whether you want to join the committee or whatever. But there's another slide just to cover those few things.
Yeah, can we just get one click? Yeah, so that was very serious stuff. Let's kind of get a little bit more relaxed now. So Agile. Next one, do you have an opinion? I missed in the beginning how many people actually kind of experienced Agile already or have an opinion. Can I just ask those people who have an opinion based on their experience or based on their interest to stand up, please? Right. Oh, sorry. I think that's a really good indication to me that we already have some people. No, hold on. It's a little bit too early to do what people kind of start doing after years of practicing something. They start talking about maturity models. So I'm going to do some sort of a quick test and see whether we, as a mature expert in Agile, can do something like this.
This is Sergey last night.
And if we are not, please join the community. Please, join us in the pub. Yes, yeah, why not? Yeah, please take your seats.
Yeah.
After a few drinks, absolutely. So now back to some more serious stuff. So what's next? Obviously the question is, so what are you guys going to do? So we're going to run some sort of survey, ask your opinion about your current problems, what you're facing, what's your experience, what have you done, what have you learned, and what areas of interest you've got in this quite a wide, area, I would say, of agile, well, project management, agile delivery, agile development, all sorts of, keywords I can use here. We're going to run 4 events next year. So again, welcome with your ideas, what you would like to discuss with your peers, with your colleagues, asking external speakers to come and talk to us, asking experts who actually know more than someone else, or maybe you'd like to share your own experience with agile implementation or delivery. Success stories. As I say, I'm pretty sure you have something to share with others. Please share your stories. We will be happy to share it with your colleagues in the UK. Also, as we keep saying, we need more participation. Please join us if you believe there is something you would like to share, you would like to be involved. So please join the committee. We'll be kind of forming and starting now. And any other way of sharing your feedback, we'll start with LinkedIn group with the surveys, emails. I think you've got Rob's email address. So please feel free to come back and say, I've got an opinion. Here's something I'd like to share with you guys.
Right, I think we can probably get started on the Q&A section. So obviously Bob and Sergey have introduced themselves, Joseph has as well. The two other guys are people obviously that I've met or worked with at some point in the past. Mac I work with at the moment actually at my current company. He's a partner in a company called Value Glide, but he's an expert in Agile, Kanban, Lean, people, technology, the lot. So he's a fountain of knowledge. So any questions on those things is certainly worth directing at Mac. Ray is a director at a company called PM Partners. So they provide support for rolling out Agile and Lean and Kanban sort of methodologies, but also looking at the portfolio sort of management at the same time. So good combination. So basically I think we've got sort of 20-25 minutes for this section. So questions basically on anything that you can anything that's been addressed tonight. So the COP, Agile generally, the ACP certification, and any issues you're having at your own sort of companies would be good to hear as well. So we've got 2 mics, so we'll just run round as questions get asked.
Any ideas?
Ideas as well, yeah. Hopefully vaguely related to Agile will be useful.
I'll kick it off. When we talk about Agile, are we talking only software development, or is it applicable to things beyond software?
Yeah, good question, Steve. I think one of the things that almost disappointed me really was the rollout or the naming of the new PMI kind of appendix to the PMBOK. It's the software extension to the PMBOK basically that's just only recently been released. One of the things we're doing at PM Partners is looking at the application of Agile and Agile techniques, yes, in software development, which is obviously where it has its roots, where it's been kind of developed and perfected, but also applying it to everywhere. We believe that kind of any kind of project management environment, or most project management environments, could benefit from some level of agility. And we're doing it. We're actually living and breathing it at the moment. So running a project which is a business process mapping project. What we've done is we've got fixed time period, we've got fixed amount of resources, and we're just doing iterations, little kind of 2-week sprints, and we're prioritizing as we go, and we're getting as much mapping as we can within the constraints of, say, a financial year. So nothing to do with software development at all, but it's a project that's being run as an Agile project. And we'd like to see more of that. We'd like to see that blending with generic kind of P3M governance. One of our clients, again, kind of from the pharmaceutical world, so very heavily regulated, very hot on their phase gates, for example. They're very rigid, and they came to us and saying, what do? We want to adopt Agile, but what can we do with this? So again, we're working with them to kind of, on different ways that we can incorporate kind of, I can go into more detail later, but I'm conscious that I'm kind of going on a bit. So, but there's lots of different ways you can do it, basically. So the answer, in short, yes, and we should encourage it.
And not that the ACP is the only thing I talk about, but the ACP is intended to be agnostic, technology agnostic. It doesn't have to be software. It's not, but that's the intention, right? So that's the intention. One of my clients is a marketing department for a company, so nothing to do with software. They're all marketing people. If you're not familiar with the WikiSpeed car, go look that up. They built a car using Scrum, completely transforming the way you think about cars, different than anything you'll ever imagine. You want it?
Yeah.
All right.
I think it would be a mistake to actually equate agility with Scrum. Scrum is one of the member of the family of agile methodologies or agile frameworks. So if you actually look at the Center for Innovation, NHS, they are actually using agile big time, and their US partners. Well, what they've done is that they've gone back a couple of steps. They've gone to the Deming area, and they've started with the PDSA, and they are using it heavily. All you need to just search for Center for Innovation for NHS, and they are using it. Or, for example, Rolls-Royce have been using it for the past 5-6 years in terms of their turbine development. So it is what we actually translate agile to be, because we seem to be narrowly looking at Scrum when we say agile. Scrum is one method of project management of agile teams, whereas we are with the PMI that I saw that it's currently being presented, it's actually a wider one. Agile teams live in agile organizations, and that's what I hope that the PMI project is actually looking at.
Hi, thanks. It's interesting you mentioned the NHS as an agile organisation. I think a lot of us might have a different experience with the NHS actually. I'm actually currently working with Monitor, one of their regulators, and my question is around the governance of agile, having visibility of risk management, how it aligns to the organisation's strategic objectives, and also around NHS and government organisations, how you look at the conservative nature of government as well, and gateway reviews, for example.
I'll start and I'll let the folks continue. So the fact is that one of the myths that I hope the PMI project will, when Rob was telling me that, would you like to join us in this panel? I did very short research in the past 2-3 days. One of the things that it's removing is the myth that if you go agile, you throw away all controls. In fact, it is contrary to what we think, that it will be far tighter control, far more granularity in terms of observing and making visible the things that are happening or the problems that we're going to see. So one of the things that we have to remove is that agility is not chaos, is not anarchy. It most certainly doesn't equate to. When I said about the Center for Innovation, especially Center for Innovation in NHS, what they've done is that if you look at the Southampton work that they've been doing, very simply they asked the question, how do we treat someone who has Parkinson's disease? If somebody is diagnosed with Parkinson's, what they do is that they go to their home and raise their seats, rather than actually saying that the sooner you get the medicine to them, it will stop the disease getting worse at the fastest level that you can. So therefore, what they did was that they said, what's the highest value to go? So we have to be very careful to understand that agile is not the processes, practices, and the roles and the artifacts of Scrum. It is the definition that we're putting into the PMI. So therefore, yes, in terms of NHS, but in my opinion, granularity of control is far greater. It is how we deliver that. Sorry, I took...
That's all right. In my opinion, a lot of what we do in Agile, whatever flavor of it you're talking about, is risk management, right? All of the things that we talk about, delivering quickly and making things visible, this is all about risk management. But beyond that, there are, and if you look at the ACP and what's in there, there are a lot of things in there about how do you do risk management on an Agile project, you know, risk-adjusted backlogs and risk burn-down charts. These things people don't talk about very much, but they're tools that are available for that. So, and as far as government, I can talk about the states because that's what I know. The United States government is mandating Agile in IT projects. I wish they had done it with this Obama website, but you know, clearly they did not. And one of my long-term clients has been, I don't know what your departments of licensing are like here, but in the States they're not known as effective or efficient in the States. And the Washington State Department of Licensing just recently turned up 7 more Scrum teams. They've converted their entire IT organization to Scrum. Only one flavor of Agile, but popular one. So it's everywhere. Actually, and this week they are completing, the Washington State itself is completing a master contract, or maybe you call them a frame contract here, a master contract for Agile services for any government agency that can purchase that. So, I mean, it's getting huge in government. And when the government's taking it on, you know it has passed the early stages of adoption.
Just on that government adoption, some of you might be aware it's very highly publicised. Obviously the universal credit fiasco, you know, when you first look at that, it looks like Agile's failed the government. You know, you look at it and obviously they had over 1,000 people. It was one of the biggest kind of Agile you know, programs going. And the mandate from government was, you know, we're going to deliver this in an Agile way. We're going to go and deliver it with an Agile way. But the problem is they didn't know how to. They had 1,000 people working in small Agile teams. They just had no governance. So it comes back to your question. Let's not forget that Agile was developed for, you know, smaller teams. It's a mechanism to you know, to kind of help those kind of teams deliver that kind of work in an efficient way, and you know, to deliver value quicker. And it's naturally in a process of growing up, I think. It's naturally in this process where, you know, organisations are now starting to take note. Large, you know, organisations, you know, don't get larger than the government, and they're starting to say, well, this makes sense. You know, let's do this, but again, you know, unless they take the right approach, unless they reconcile it with their existing governance, you know, we're not going to change the way that budgets are set overnight. So we have to fit within those kind of constraints, and that's what they need to get right. Just a little note on that. I mean, just from people maybe coming in from this from a traditional PMP approach and wondering, you know, how does this work? Do I have to turn absolute left or do I have to turn absolute right? You know, is it agile or is it not? You know, it's not. Agile is a spectrum. I think we've touched on that quite a bit. You know, Scrum's about there. DSDM is over here. You know, very kind of tight. You know, then you've got kind of free for all over here. So it's a spectrum, and it's about finding out what kind of techniques, what ceremonies, or whatever's going to help us on the specific situation that we find ourselves in. And how do we then, asking ourselves the question of how that reconciles back to the governance. So a simple one, for example, if you look at Agile as predominantly, you know, a delivery mechanism, you know, it's a way of in your standard kind of WBS, you could identify a certain work package to be delivered in an Agile way because it makes sense. Whereas another one may just, you know, be delivered as you would normally deliver it. So it's about asking yourselves those questions and building those mechanisms into the you know, the governance system you already have, the methodology that you're using as it is. I don't know whether you want to say anything on that. No? Cool. Okay. Yep. Yep. If we just get you a mic. Yep.
Thank you. I would like to say that it's rather being agile than doing agile.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to say.
Yeah.
I mean, let me ask this question. Every day morning, we catch train to come into the city. Now, what happens when you just know, oh, the train is late by about 2 minutes, 3 minutes? The moment you do that, what you're doing is you're looking at your watch, you look at the other time schedules, and what you immediately start doing is, okay, Now I'm gonna take this particular train, which will go take me over there. Then I'm gonna shift over there. Blah 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 blah. Then eventually you reach the office at about 5 minutes late, or pretty much the same time. What you're doing is de-risking it.
Yeah.
That's all. That's what agile is. So if you are doing, you do it every day. It's just a matter of you realizing of you're doing it or not doing it is the difference. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you for that. And I think everyone here wholeheartedly agrees, and that's a really good example. That's rapid prioritization. It's prioritization on the fly, reacting, trying to second guess your environment, and managing risk as you go. And that's what it is as well. We got one client that it's we said, yeah, we'll do agile, but we'll do it in 6-week sprints. And you kind of think, that's a phase. That's a long time. And it means that they're not actually getting everything that they want to get out of it. The whole point is that you're breaking something big down into small increments that you can, so you're actually biting that risk off in little chunks. And so that's that's in line with that example. And so yeah, we're working with that client to kind of just readjust their expectations.
Can I just add something? I absolutely agree. It's how you think, how you actually understand what agile means. What I kind of notice sometimes people use this sort of, oh, we're doing agile, and therefore we're not going to have any control, nothing. We just do stuff as we go. So look for other extremes when people use the word agile to remove everything and just do whatever they want in the way they want, and like it becomes a chaos. It becomes like a dangerous. So be careful.
Does the funding model change for an agile project versus a traditional project?
One of the current discussions that's going is that it is controversial, because when we talk about funding is we normally ask the folks who are going to deliver something, given a requirement, to give us an estimate of how much it's going to cost and how much it's going to take. The model that's currently being discussed is that rather than asking someone and then going away and only monitoring based on certain trigger factors, is that can we combine us with the team who's going to do? We will say this is how much we can afford, this is how long we can wait, and while we monitor every day or every so often what the result is. So that gives us the control and the power that we can say this is how much I've spent and this is it, I can't go any further, or this is the time my timelines have reached. This is the most controversial thing that currently and value management or systems or others have been talking in the past. We have now moved forward and saying that if we want to have an agile organization, then we have to start changing our paradigm. We have to start thinking differently. We cannot ask a subcontractor to give me time and cost and then simply say, give me a report every fortnight. It has to be in a way that we say that I take the risk on being able to spend so much and I can only wait so much. And therefore, I will monitor to say at what point I am going to run out of money, at what point I'm happy with the software that's there. And therefore, we have to be closer involved.
I'd say two things. The first one is Agile was actually not created to do projects. Agile was created to do product management. And if you're in a product management environment, the things about scope change and all of that make perfect sense. Here's an example. Does everybody remember Windows 3.1? And Windows 3.1.1? Okay, what was the difference? Network, it didn't crash. I mean, yes, it did. Networking, okay? Windows is a product, right? It's still around. It's not a project. It gets its funding every year, right? We know it's going to continue, at least for a while. I don't know, this latest Windows 8 was nuts. But why was networking in 3.1.1 and not in 3.1? They couldn't get it done, right? No time, no money. Bill wanted to get the graphic user interface out for the first time for them. They'd never had a GUI before that. It was all command line, right? Wanted to get it out. So even though networking wasn't done yet, they got it out. And then they added networking. This is what Agile was created to do. Not the way we do projects in enterprise organizations, which is, hey, I'm going to upgrade the finance system this year, and then I'm not going to touch it for another 5 years, right? When we have that model, we're actually incentivizing our business people to cram all the crap into it that they can, because they know they're not going to get funded for another 5 years. If we manage it more like a product, where we're making small incremental changes and additions to things, then that's a completely different paradigm. Does it not work on projects? No, don't get me wrong there. It works great. But you need to understand what you're bumping into when your team over here who's been trained in Agile is going, but we're not going to take care, we don't care about the scope because it can slip in, where is it going to slip? Right? Where does it go? So we need to manage expectations with management and say, okay, we're going to deliver what you need, not necessarily what you thought you wanted up front. So over time, we'll get to that. I was going to say something else too, and I don't remember what it was now, because I got a little hot about that.
I wanted to add, we need to take into account how at least the organizations I work in and I know about, most of the time plan their finances for the next year. If you look at the budget planning process, the kind of big functional level, big company level, well, it has got very little to do with Agile. So bridging this gap between the organizational level planning and day-to-day delivery of Agile type projects is one of the challenges we're hoping to address. There are some examples how to do it. There are many more questions, absolutely correct question. How can we actually make sure we have enough money to deliver bare minimum we need? That's a difficult question to answer. I mean, some answers you already heard, but hopefully you will get more answers from this group. From hopefully you'll join us and you will participate and provide your ideas and your experience. But I don't think we can give you a very easy answer. That's how you do it. This is it. This is the process. Follow. So I think it's an open question.
No, I think another thing that you run into, and one of the reasons that we go to Agile, or that people are looking at that and going, it makes sense, is when you're developing software in particular, which is where we do most Agile work, though it fits other places. I want to hit software for a minute. No, I want to hit any knowledge work. When you're doing any knowledge work, you are not building one of these. If I'm building one of these, I can tell you how long it's going to take. Because if I leave a part out, it doesn't work. I have to put every single part in and make it done, right? When I'm building software, it's like I'm painting a painting. How many of you have developers who could continue to refactor that code for weeks, over and over and over, polishing it until it shines, right? This is because it's closer to art than it is to part work, right? So we are using tools and techniques traditionally that are designed for part work and trying to manage artwork, and it doesn't work. And that's where I think you come in, because if you can understand this, get that making software is closer to artwork than it is to building houses or microphones, then you can communicate this to the management of organizations, and you can help transform organizations into being more agile as an organization, not just doing Agile as a technique, right?
Just a note on that, and bringing it back from the perspective of the, I suppose, traditional project management world. it follows the same, in the project context, it follows the same rules as progressive elaboration that we know from the PMBOK. First time a team comes together and works with each other in an agile way, they'll fall flat on their face. The first few sprints will be a disaster generally, and then they start to click. They know how each other works. They're working very closely. They're working with the customer closely, and that's the whole principle of it. And when they get used to it, their productivity starts to kind of go up like this, and then as they go down the road and start to do more, they start to know what they're capable of, and so their estimation starts getting more. As problems and opportunities are put in front of them, they start to get to know a little bit more about what they're capable of and how quickly. So, like anything, it does take a little bit of time, but when you're implementing agile, you kind of have to allow for that, and you have to kind of almost coach them through that process.
Speaking of coaching, can I say one thing about coaching real fast? Because you just said the word coach. So my daughter plays volleyball, and she loves it. And I want you to imagine for a second, put together a group of girls, right, and send them to a weekend class and give them a book on volleyball. Put together another group of girls, give them a coach with experience that works them through exercises, that trains them, that drills them, that then goes to the games with them and sits on the sidelines and says, okay, this girl over here, she always hits it deep. So you guys go back there and watch. Which one of those teams is going to win the game? Even more than that, which one of those teams do you want to be on? Which one's going to be more fun, more pleasant to be a part of? Clearly the one with the coach. When people try and implement Agile in their organizations without a coach, it's very difficult. I won't say you can't do it, but I am cleaning up after people a lot as I do coaching. And I just implore you, get a coach. Get some help if you're trying to use Agile. So there. Sorry.
Just on the finance point, I think I've been in 2 or 3 organisations that have been in that sort of transformation sort of mode, if you like, from waterfall to agile. And I think one thing that comes very clear to me is that people feel there is an accuracy of planning, an accuracy of financial forecasting, and that this is something they could really hang their hat on and say, I have really accurate. And in Agile, I haven't got that. But really, it's an illusion of accuracy. People feel that these things are accurate, but actually there's probably an awful lot more doubt, an awful lot less risk management, but it appears that there is accuracy there. So for me, this is one of the reasons I'm an enthusiast, because I feel that actually there's a lot more there to be had in Agile than there is in Waterfall from those perspectives. Thank you.
So aside from Scrum, what do you think the future is for other Agile techniques like Kanban and DSDM?
Yeah, go for it.
David J. Anderson, the gentleman who's actually known to have suggested the current what we know as Kanban, he insists that Kanban is not necessarily agile, or actually in conferences says it's not agile. The fact is that what we are moving towards 2005, quite a lot of folks have been saying that Scrum, particularly and XP as a combination, were in crisis because they just could not scale up. That scaling was killing them. Therefore, Kanban came along around the same kind of time when it says that process improvement, organizational process improvement, that needs to go one level above it. It will have many of the scrums within it. In fact, if you look at Kanban columns, you can see the bit that says developed, that's where the scrum starts residing. The fact is that we're now moving up, and when we don't know, this is a process improvement. PMI is one, and then maybe in the future we'll come back and say we'll combine so many of those. So the portfolio of methodologies is available to us. But going back to 1999, a gentleman called Professor Guy Fitzgerald says we're getting to a point that maybe in some organizations, some projects, we may never not need any methodology. So we are going out of this thing that there should be a box to tick for everything we do. And that's the element. Going outside that, forgive me for using the normal language, but going outside the proverbial box and actually starting to think that if we are going to have agility that is reacting to the environment around us, being able to cope with the financial pressure, competition, and all of those, we have to start thinking differently. Is there a formula for it? No. PMI is one suggestion towards it.
Just kind of squaring the circle, I suppose. I suppose that's the great thing about the ACP is that it doesn't, it's not preaching one particular way of doing things. It's, it's broad, coming back to what Joseph was saying. So it does take into account that, DSDM, great for certain scenarios. Maybe if you're running Prince2 in an organization, DSDM, fits quite nicely, snugly onto that, and there's guidance for it. So it's about what works for you. It's like anything. Again, in traditional project management methodologies, there's all sorts of different ways. You're not supposed to have one that fits everything. You're supposed to tailor it for your own environment, and the same with agility. There are certain techniques. You may get something from Kanban, you may not. Try it. Evolve it, but give it time. And if you find that it's naturally not catching on, don't use it. And you've got to kind of work that out, I think. But you need that kind of strong leadership and ownership to actually drive that through. Yeah.
Okay. I have one more thing to say. Yeah. I've always got one more thing to say. Sorry. I don't know what's next, or what's the next thing in Agile. I don't know, but I'm looking out at a group of my friends, project managers like me, right? I did traditional construction project management. It was the IT side of construction, but construction project management for like 15 years before I started doing anything Agile. And it makes me happy that you're here, wanting to learn more about Agile, wanting to be more Agile. It makes me sad that it's taken this frickin' long for PMI to catch on. Who knows better about projects than you? Who should have been leading the charge toward becoming an Agile organization? Who other than you? And who should be leading the charge to the next thing? You. So I want to challenge you to look out there. Be innovative. Be project management innovators. Agile came about because some people were in crisis. They were trying to apply traditional sequential project management approaches to software, and it didn't work. They were taking construction management, project management, and applying it to software, and it didn't work. And now what I'm seeing is people taking software project management approaches and trying to apply it other places. Same problem. You need to innovate. The folks that came up with Agile looked around. I mean, they had their own experiences and their own things happening too, but one of the heavy influences was lean. So if you want to apply Agile to other things besides software, why don't you go to the source that they went to? Look at lean. But look at other things too. I mean, who the heck would have thought to combine automotive management approaches with software? Good Lord. You need to be innovative. So be broad, learn other things, read a lot, get out there. There's communities of practice that we have that are about pharmaceuticals and about government and about everything. Go get involved with some of those that you don't know right now and take it and apply it in your context and see what it can do. Because I think you can come up with that thing. And I think we as an organization need to be leading the charge on where Agile goes next.
I don't think we can surpass that. So I think that's we'll draw it to a inspirational stuff. So I think quick round of applause for the panelists.
I'm Nick Lake. I am one of the directors on the board of Project Management Institute in the UK. I want to wrap up tonight with 3 invitations to you. The first invitation is that tonight's focus on Agile has been very much Agile for the practitioner. and we are also in the community of practice looking at how organizations use Agile and the challenges that brings. So tomorrow we have an experimental pilot of a workshop for organizations on issues in using Agile in the organization. Because it's a pilot, it's been by invitation. We've had 5 topics to choose from, just to give you an idea of the sort of thing that we were looking at. And just in random order, the first one was a case study on a project we're running where we have to roll out a complex solution to a large number of users in multiple global locations. How would you use Agile? Reflections on how to right-size project governance on large-scale implementations, which was very much picking up a comment that we were talking about earlier on. How to engage the business for Agile projects. The cultural shift needed by senior leaders to enable successful use of Agile. And who decides if a project is suited to Agile? What are the criteria? And what are the indicators if that decision was wrong? So the invitation here is, if your organization would like to participate in this sort of a workshop in the future, please see me afterwards and suggest names, whoever we might invite. The second invitation is that, as Robert referred to, we're always keen to get new members. However, I'm going to be pretty light on this because 3/4 of the folk in the room are already PMI members. So it's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing, PMI. I've been a volunteer for 17 years with PMI in various guises. And this is where the profession of project management is. If you're a professional project manager, joining PMI is the right thing to do. It brings you access to things like this great event this evening, all kinds of interesting stuff, and most of it is done at very little cost because we get the great support from organizations like Shell. And so if you're not a PMI member, please come over to the table afterwards. There's various materials here. You can look at the sorts of things that PMI has to offer. And the third invitation I want to ask is that we say thank you to the various people that have helped make tonight such a great event. Firstly, Johan, who met with Joe Flaheef and others and cooked up the idea in the first place. Secondly, I would like to thank Shell for supporting this evening and tomorrow. Both John Wilson, who's the manager for the knowledge processes that Shell use for Agile techniques, and Gavin Spry, and Sarah Nee, who was our helper in just getting everything organised for today. So can we put our hands together for them, please? Thank you. And the second group of people I want to thank is that we have 2 teams that have made today possible. We have a team that kind of picks up one-off events or first-time events, which is led by Anthony Sneed and Sagal Deary. If you can stand up and wave at the back, everybody can say. And also, yeah. And also I want to thank Robert for the effort that Robert and Miriam, Bob, Sergey, and I'm sure I've left out 1 or 2 others. Have I? Anyone else here tonight? No, that's okay. Thank you to this team who are pulling together the community of practice. We would look forward to your support with events like this in future. Thank you.